Hello, my name is Gabby and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then welcome to my channel, and today's video is going to be my May 2026 reading wrap-up. And we're going to go a little bit out of order this month so I can tackle the series that I caught up to just like all at once at the end of the video. But otherwise, we have manga, we have a readathon, and we have some other things as well. So with that, I will have the content warnings I can find linked down below in the description along with links to some resources, and let's go ahead and get into it. And we're going to start off with my first finished read of the Asian Readathon, which took place throughout the month of May. I will have a link to the creator of this readathon and also to the directory of Asian books that was created alongside this readathon in the description of this video, so you can go and check those out. We're going to start off with Perfect Victims by Mohammed Elker. This is a nonfiction book that explores the implications of Palestinians having to prove their humanity and be perfect victims. I read Rivka a couple of years ago, which is an incredible poetry collection, and that has led me here. And yeah, this dove a lot into what it means to be seen as a perfect victim and how impossible of a metric that is for Palestinians to meet. Even with all the defanging and all the disclaimers that society makes them give, it's oftentimes still not enough to break through all of the racism and propaganda. And why should they even have to meet all of these expectations when they're people and have the right to live? And you can feel the understandable frustration within this book as well. The author, again, is a poet. There are definitely some really strong and even lyrical lines in here as well. I also realized towards the end of this audiobook that it does fit in with the book that teaches you something part of the How It's Done prompt for the Asian Readathon, which made it my first finished read of the Asian Readathon and also just an incredible start to it. And then we have The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bobolino. And this follows Gray, who has dedicated her life to being the magical well for her mage Kier to use. But when they are assigned a dangerous quest to protect a child from an enemy nation, Gray and Kier have to decide what they are willing to sacrifice to protect their secrets. I read this because of the cover, and I don't regret it, honestly. I really like the romance, I like the banter, I like the angst and the yearning, even when it did feel like a little bit unneeded on the character's part from an outsider's perspective. I thought the magic system was interesting, but I did have some trouble paying attention during the battles and the action scenes, which isn't abnormal for me just in general, but it is the case here. The story itself also felt like, I guess not so much slow, but just like not a ton happens in places. And it's a long book, but on the other hand, I did kind of like that about this, because it felt like I got to settle into it and with the characters in particular. And I do think the characters played a major part of why I liked this book. It also did take me a little bit of time to understand the world and the setting and like the military structure at the beginning. I do feel like I was left with that feeling for a little bit too long, but it did work out eventually. Like, things mostly came together for me. And overall, I left this book with a lot of positive feelings about it. There's also a second and third book coming for this series. I'm looking forward to whatever they have in store. And I ended up giving The Second Death of Locke 4 out of 5 stars. And then we have A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Flynn. And this follows our main character who supports her mother and 2 younger sisters through being a con artist. As a gifted art forger, she is able to paint the future, but even magic is not going to be enough to put her family back together and keep away the gangsters demanding payment for her mother's gambling debts away. With little options left, she agrees to a marriage contract with a mysterious dragon lord as he offers her family a fresh start and answers about the disappearance of her father, in exchange for living with him in a desolate undersea palace and assisting in overthrowing the tyrannical Dragon King. Not me actually reading my seasonal TBRs. And yeah, this was on my spring TBR. Elizabeth Lim is one of my favorite authors ever, and this book was an amazing reminder of why that is. And it basically had everything that I could ever want from an Elizabeth Lim book, from the beautiful and atmospheric writing to all of the magic and fantasy and charm. And the magic and the fantasy are 2 of the strongest elements of this book for sure. It's also a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's set in a world and a setting that you know if you've read Elizabeth Lim's other books from this universe, but it also felt super fresh and unique. And I thought it expanded upon and gave more of what I've already loved about the world and the setting. I also really liked our main character, and I think that this may be my favorite romance of the universe so far. It's enemies to lovers, there's mess, there's yearning, there's angst. It feels like a dynamic that hasn't always worked for me in the past, especially when it comes to his character in particular, but it worked out for me here, and I really loved them, and I was invested in their relationship. I also thought it was fun to spend so much time underwater, again, especially combined with the magic and the fantasy. I felt the same way about the Dragon's Promise. There are dragons and turtles and mermaids and demons and other beings and forms of magic as well. It felt like I was reading a fairy tale. I will say my only complaint about this is that some of the dialogue and like the fake swearing didn't work for me. But in this case, I do feel like I can overlook it because so much of this was so incredible, so I did end up giving this 5 stars. And as for the Asian Readathon, this book did cover the prompt Golden, which was to read a book about a character chasing a dream or a book that has gold on the cover, and also the prompt Soda Pop, which was to read a book that is light and fun or a book with stylish and bold elements. I went with this one for Golden because of the gold on the cover and also the gold on the sprayed edges. serious. And I went with this for Soda Pop because of, again, the cover and the sprayed edges, but also the writing style combined with the magic and the fantasy for the bold and stylish elements part of the prompt. And then we have volume 1 of Senpai is an Otoko no Ko by Pop. And this follows our main character, Saki, who finds herself captivated by her senior, Makoto, on the school board, and although she is worried that her senior might be uncomfortable receiving a confession from another girl, she works up the courage to do it anyway, and through that confession finds out that Makoto is actually dressing as a girl. And Makoto is now the one expecting Saki to be the one that is freaked out, and rejects her confession, citing his identity as the reason that he's ever fallen in love before. But Saki has no issues with his identity at all, and is determined to become his first love, which leaves Makoto to wonder if he could truly fall in love if he cannot find it within himself to love himself first. I watched the anime adaptation of this while it was airing, and it really stole my heart. Like, it ended up being not only one of my favorite anime of that season, but one of my favorite anime of like the whole year. And now it's almost summer again, so here we are. And yeah, this volume was basically the beginning of the anime, lots of cute and fun moments. You can also see the beginnings of where they're going to go when the story ends up getting like into things and more serious. This is also how I finished my Asian Readathon TBR. I read this for the prompt free, which was to read a book by an Asian author where the characters balance two different identities or fighting a hidden and internal struggle. I do feel like this series fits both sides of that prompt. And then I also read this for the prompt Your Idol versus What It Sounds Like, which is to read a book by an Asian author that has dark themes or a book about friendship or chosen family. And this series does have some like dark and heartbreaking themes, but that's more for like the later volumes than this one. But what this volume does have is the beginning of some really incredible friendships and relationships, so yeah, Readathon complete. As for other manga, I did start to catch up on the manga series that I normally read as they update every month. I have fallen now a few months back on some series, and I didn't necessarily get to all that I wanted to read or every single chapter, but I did read chapters 161 to 163 of Gachiakura, chapters 32.5 to 33 of Galaxios, chapters 208 to 215 of Windbreaker, and chapters 178 to 180 of The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity. So yeah, again, didn't get to every single chapter that I wanted to, didn't catch up to every single series that I wanted to this month, but it is a step to get back to where I want to be again. But my favorite set of these chapters definitely came from Windbreaker. I am loving this new storyline. We're finally diving into and focusing in on a character that I have been waiting for. There's also a lot of friendship angst that is really affecting me, honestly, so I am just fully 100% invested in the series right now, because I know based off of their past arcs, the resolution to this conflict is going to be so incredible and healing and is probably going to make me cry. But yeah, I do hope to catch up to the rest soon. I also did film a reading vlog for the chapters that I just named off, so if you want my full like in the moment thoughts, that is in that video. And I will also be tackling the chapters that I haven't read yet in part 2 at some point in the future. But now let's move on to the series that I actually did catch up to at the beginning of the month, and that is the Avatar: The Last Airbender comics. I got back into the comics last month and read a ton of them, but this is a month that I ran out. And warning, if you haven't watched or finished a show and you care about spoilers, I do think that it is impossible to like hear about some of these comics, see the covers, and not pick up on some things. But otherwise, we are going to be starting off with Azula in the Spirit Temple. And this is a standalone comic. It follows Azula, who after failing an attack on her latest target, finds herself in a mysterious temple where she must confront her past. I was really excited about this going into it because I wanted more insight on Azula's character, and then we were getting it at first in a way that I thought was exciting and interesting, but the further that I got into this, the more I just quickly had a feeling of like, what is going on here? And it did kind of feel like the creators were just trying to use this comic as a way to figure out what they wanted to do with Azula and her character, which I didn't necessarily love, but it was fun to see more of Ty Lee, for example. I liked that. And there is a part of me that did like the exploration, even if it didn't lead to any new growth or development in Azula's character or story. But also, like, what was the point of this if none of that did happen, you know? Just a look into her journey, I guess, so that we can see what she's up to, which is fine, but I do feel like this could have been so much more. It's also like only 80 pages, which is much shorter than the rest of the comics. Even in terms of the standalones, like, I couldn't believe that this was over when it was, because it felt as fast to read as the pacing was in the story. I am going to give this one 3 stars, but it is unfortunately a very disappointed 3 stars. And then we have Imbalance. And this follows Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Toph as they return to the earth and fire industries and aren't met with the warm welcome that they expected. But they soon learn that there is a massive bender versus non-bender conflict within the town that is about to turn violent. And they have to face decisions regarding power and identity in order to try to heal the divide and save the town. And I thought that this one was interesting, especially in the way that it explored the dynamics between benders and non-benders, and how some benders benders feel inherently superior to non-benders, and what happens when things start to get a little bit more equal between them and the benders that feel threatened by that equality. Very reminiscent of our current reality here, and I did think that this touched on a lot of layers to the conflict and dynamic, but as usual with the comics, I do feel like this needed more time to just really flesh everything out. And on that note, I also feel like this wrapped up too quickly. I feel like the last portion of this in particular could have really slowed down. I would have liked to explore the main villain a little bit more, and also some of the newer characters as well, and more in depth. There's also a big moment in here when it comes to decision making that I would have liked to have seen discussed more as well, because I thought it was interesting. The art style also had like what I would call a drastic change in this trilogy, by the way, and it was noticeably different. It was pretty and I liked it. I liked the art style before this too, but again, it is just like noticeably different. I also like the way that this bridged some of the space between ATLA and Legend of Korra. There were a few main cast members that got some like really cool moments. This is probably my favorite storyline for Sokka in particular. I don't necessarily feel like it does everything you could ever want from a final trilogy of a series, but I also don't think it's like the worst for that either, and I'm gonna give it 4.25 out of 5 stars. And then we have the bounty hunter and the tea brewer, which follows Iroh when he is captured by June, who is a bounty hunter, and they find themselves in a situation where Iroh must confront his past while June contemplates her future. This was a cute one-shot story, very tea-focused, some farming, definitely the coziest of the series so far, and I really enjoyed those moments. I thought that they were really charming. I wish we spent more time in those moments, but we also do have a more serious plotline filled with reflection and growth for both of our main characters here. And yeah, it was fast as per usual with the comics, but I still enjoyed it. I also enjoyed seeing more of June, a lot more than I kind of thought that I would going into this. And Iroh is one of my favorite characters, and just seeing his smile makes me smile. So I do wish that we slowed this down some. I really wish it was longer, actually. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I had a good time for sure, but there was just so much potential for more. And finally, we have Ashes of the Academy, which follows Ki as she is enrolled in the Royal Fire Academy for Girls, which is known for its strict curriculum and its structure. So when he starts to have doubts about the headmistress, Zuko convinces May to become an academy teacher so that she could watch over Ki and keep her on the right path so that the Academy's culture doesn't turn her into a Zula. And yeah, this is the last of them, for now at least. I think there may actually be another one coming out very soon. I'm gonna have to look into that more. But this was another one that I was really excited about going into it as someone who loves all 3 of the characters on this cover. And it did mostly live up to my expectations. I love the character growth that this gave May in particular, and really just how much this focused on her in general. The flashbacks with her and Azula as children were interesting, and I had a lot of fun with her in the present timeline as well. This also does have some commentary on school systems erasing and or altering real history. As per usual, I do wish that they had a little bit more time to explore this further and more in depth. Like, this is one that I'm overall okay with the pacing of. I do just wish that it was longer, and that also applies for some of the relationships in here as well, especially since this is like the last of the Fire Nation for now, and it feels like there is a lot left in the overarching storyline for them. But yeah, the characters were fun, the action scenes were fun, the art style was different than the others, but again, I thought it was pretty, and I ended up giving Ashes of the Academy 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that is all that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and answer a question that'll be around here if you want to do that, and hopefully I will see you here next time. Bye.